when I was just starting to build Women in Biz Network, wanted to get people to come out to in-person events. I had to develop relationships. It took me a while to find my voice. And really what I learned was that what's most important is just being yourself and finding your confidence and just really reminding yourself how you can be of service and less on any alternative motives. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're talking about subjects near and dear to our heart this week with our weekly Biz Buzz focused on networking. And my co host, Natasha Mitchell, is here to join me. I'm Leigh Mitchell, and we're here to talk about building relationships and networking and how we get comfortable with that again, especially after all we've gone through with the pandemic.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, Leigh. Hi, everyone. And yeah, networking is just such an important part of our businesses. And it was hard enough before our whole world shut down for a couple of years to get out there and network and know where to spend your time and how to do this networking thing the right way. So today's going to just be a great opportunity to share our experience of what's working in networking, what has worked in the past, what's working now, and really the best way to use networking to grow our business. So, Leigh, obviously, you're the master networker and you have the whole Women in Biz network. Tell us a little bit about your journey in networking and how you have built up this amazing network. What are some of the things that have really worked for you?
Yeah, that's thank you for such a thoughtful question. And yeah, I found that my journey into networking was a really interesting one because I had to get comfortable with who I was as a person, what my value was in the business world, and just getting comfortable making small talk that will
Mm.
hopefully lead to more meaningful relationships. And so the journey really began back in 2010 when I was just starting to build Women in Biz Network, wanted to get people to come out to in-person events, which is obviously not an easy thing in a very saturated market of events in the biggest cities in the world, Toronto. So really, I had to develop relationships, use social media to help to build those relationships online so that I could then transfer that into in-person opportunities. And it took me a while to find my voice. And really what I learned was that what's most important is just being yourself and
Mhm.
finding your confidence and just really reminding yourself if you're feeling uncomfortable, like how you can be of service. And once you focus on the service and less on any alternative motives, which to me was just like, I want to help people. And so what's the best way to help people? Well, you have to get bums in seats. And then, how do you do that? Right. So it's like breaking down those goals. But, I'm sure you've had a similar journey. I know yours goes way back to when you first came to Canada and settled into a new country and learning how to connect with people. And Australia is very much a familiar culture to Canada, but I'm sure there are some different nuances. And so I'm curious to know what your experience was.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think it brings up a few things, that we're networking for different reasons sometimes. When I first came to Canada, I was networking more from a job perspective. So I'm going to blend a few things in here, but I was networking more from a job perspective versus running a business perspective. But I think the same thing applies whether you're working in a job or whether working in a business, which is getting out there to meet people. And so, firstly, I think culturally there is a little bit of a difference between Australia and Canada. Just generally, I think Canadians are a little more reserved and Australians are a little more outgoing. And so how you approach people in those settings is somewhat different too, perhaps. I think I always have had the advantage I've lived in Canada, I've lived in the US, I've lived in the UK. I've always been the person with the accent. And that's actually quite advantageous in a way, because it's what
Mhm.
you've talked about. It's being authentic, it's being yourself, and it's sort of being unique and a bit memorable. And obviously, the Australian accent certainly goes a long way. So, yeah, I want to talk about some of the ways that I did that. And back then, it was a lot of face to face activities. And networking doesn't always have to happen in a purely business setting. So for me, it was just about social settings and going out to things like meetup groups, or connecting with people at work and inviting them out to do something, have dinner or a coffee or a drink. So sometimes the social setting can be just as powerful as the business setting for building that network. And I would love your input on that. And I want to talk in a little bit about why that social setting can be as powerful, or if not more powerful, from a networking perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I think meeting people in on common ground is great. So like if you're attending, say, like a sports networking event, or something related to like the arts, or a topic that's of interest to you, so that you have that sort of opener. Why are you passionate about art? Or what's your journey been like since coming to Canada? So those are really great. I like that you talk about being unique and having just your voice being something that will bring people to be more inquisitive, and so I love that. But I believe the strategy really goes deep in terms of, ultimately, what are you trying to accomplish, and how do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be remembered as the person who was buzzing around the room and not really focused on any particular person, and maybe seems insincere? Or do you want the room to remember you as someone who took the time to have more engaging conversation, and your eyes aren't darting all over the place, kind of checking out the room, right? There's nothing worse than having a conversation with someone and they're really only half listening, or God forbid, they're on their phone.
Yeah.
But let's talk about online networking, because to me, that's such a huge new area to do with intention, right? Because
Mhm.
we've always had online networking, but now it's going to be such a challenging thing to get people back into rooms, and like deciding what's worth going out into the actual physical space, and what can be done online, and what are the drawbacks and the benefits of both. Obviously, time being one of those things, that you save time when you're not traveling
Yeah.
to a location. But they say that those that are focused on business development, that it's really important that you meet up in person with people, at least if you can, to really solidify that relationship. So
Mhm.
if our network is global, then that's something that, unless we're meeting up at an annual conference or that sort of thing, there may not be this many opportunities for that.
Yeah, and I think you raise an interesting point, and I've made a few notes before we got on the call today. I think what has been proven over the last 2 years is that actually you don't have to meet in person. It's great to meet in person, and I'm a very extroverted person. I get a lot of energy from meeting with other people, but I will say that I feel like I've been able to replicate that in very much an online environment,
Mhm.
maybe because I am extroverted and I'm very comfortable having conversations, and I'm able to sort of tap into that energetic connection even online. But
Mm.
regardless of the platform, I just want to sort of step back a tiny bit. I feel like you said it earlier, you really need to know why you're networking, what your purpose of networking is. I feel like from a purely business perspective, obviously there's just social and networking to have more friends and social situations. But when we're talking about a business perspective, I feel like there's sort of four main areas that I think could help people, structure their networking. One is networking sort of for knowledge and learning. So that would be more like summits, groups, conferences, whether they be online or in person. The second reason I feel like we network in business is for collaboration opportunities. So for things like this, Leigh, we found some great partnerships here. I've collaborated with many other different people to join our skills together. So there's really networking for collaboration opportunities. I think there's networking for referral opportunities. So now I'm building relationships with other people in the business world so that they will refer business to me. And the last sort of stage of networking or form of networking, I think, is for the client and the sale. And I feel like that's literally in order of how these things go, because I feel like the networking for clients becomes a bit more of a sales conversation. And I think there's a fine line between selling and networking. And we all know that, right? We all know that when we've been in any kind of networking event where there's that one person and they're on the big sell to us, they're looking at us as their potential client.
Mhm.
It's very uncomfortable in a networking situation to do that. They're the kind of networking contacts that I don't want to have any follow up with, because they're not there to try and find that joint opportunity. And I think that's so important in networking, is to find those joint opportunities. So I'd love to hear your thought on that. But they're sort of the categories. If I was strategically going to something to network, whether it's online or in person, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the platforms itself, I would say I'm either in this situation to learn something. That could be a mastermind. It could be like a specialty course. It could be a summit. I'm having this conversation because I'm interested in finding a collaboration opportunity. I think there's going to be a great fit. I'm looking specifically for referrals, and that could be a referral sort of joint venture or affiliate relationship. And I think this person might be a good fit. Or I'm having some kind of discussion with someone because that person has either expressed interest or been referred to me as a potential client. So what are your thoughts about that, Leigh?
Yeah, I love how strategic you are with this and how you broke it down into the different categories. So, like for me, absolutely, I think sometimes you're getting together in small groups to network, and you have a specific reason why you're getting together, and it can be
Mhm.
very strategic and specific, which
Yeah.
is great. And then there's those other opportunities where sometimes you're just walking down the street and you meet up with someone who you haven't seen forever
Yeah.
and you reconnect. And the next thing you know, you've got some new business because they didn't realize what you were doing.
Yeah.
So there's spontaneous opportunities. There's really well thought out activities. Perhaps there's ones around like where you've specifically planned an event and you want to help people to network and give them that opportunity to connect with others, but you ultimately have a goal beyond that, whether it is the sale
Mm.
or those potential referrals, just reminding people that touch point of what you do and how you can be of service to people. So I think that's really important. So I guess my question is, if the central reason for getting together is to potentially land more business, how do you do it in a way that everyone's time feels honored and it's you're not over selling, or you rush through things so quickly because you don't want to be seen as selling to anyone that you miss the point, or the point isn't very clear to those that are following you because you were concerned about being too self-serving. So I think you can go to the extremes on either side. So what's your advice on that?
Yeah, I think the number one thing first is to add value and be there to add
Mhm.
value. And I'm going to talk about this in the perspective because I think this might be an example people understand. For an example, if you are doing a webinar to make a sale at the end of it, right? That's a very
Mm.
common example that might come across as sort of networking, or it's a bit of a fine line there, but
Yeah.
let's say that's the example because it's a common one. I think again it's what we sort of said before. This is kind of coming together for a knowledge and learning. At the core of it, it's about knowledge and learning, that webinar. As the
Mhm.
provider of that, you're providing information, you're providing value, and people are getting to know you. So you are building that relationship by sharing that knowledge and information with people. So that's what I see the networking piece of that is.
Mhm.
People, then the people on the other side that are coming now, they are deciding kind of where they are coming into that event. Are they coming for knowledge and learning, or are they coming because they have a real need? They know at the end you're going to make some kind of sales pitch. They're coming for a real need. So as a provider, you're sort of providing some of these other elements of building the relationship, adding value, being authentic, all of those things to build that relationship. When you're making that sale, then by that point, hopefully the recipients of that self-selected almost to say, I'm here for the knowledge and learning, and that was great. Look, I really like Leigh and Natasha because they've been sharing so much valuable information. I'm not ready to buy now, but either when I'm ready to buy, or maybe someone else in my network I'm talking to, and they say, oh, I'm looking for a business coach or a marketing expert or a career advisor. It's like, oh, like Leigh and Natasha are great for that. So then they might come through and be sort of a referral partner as a result of that. And then the people that are coming through at the end is like, I really need help with my business or my marketing or my career. They're ready to buy. And so you've sort of touched all of those different areas, and people will come into that session with their own agenda and their own objectives. So hopefully I've answered the question. I just wanted to sort of give a specific example of how some things that might be seen as salesy in some perspective actually can be a networking opportunity if done the right way.
That's really sharp. I like that. So yeah, so I think if you're just honest and sincere about the reason why people are there, and
Yeah.
that it can be win-win, right? We can be able to help people and also stay in business, because ultimately if we're not doing well in business, then we can't serve people, right? So we have
Right.
to remind ourselves that requires sustainability, and sustainability comes from being strategic and really planning out your actions to, and having like how you're going to evaluate it, right? Like what is the ultimate goal? And it can be twofold, right? You can develop amazing relationships, but also make sure that you're doing what you need to do to um, build success.
Yeah, and you said it before. You don't need thousands of contacts. You need, from a networking perspective, 10 really good connections where you've built enough of a relationship to say, hey, I need some help with this thing, this knowledge. Or, hey, look, we've been working together for a while. Is there an opportunity for us to collaborate or joint venture? Or, hey, I'm looking for some referrals and support. Is there anyone you know, or could you share this post or this opportunity with me? So I think we're building that, and I'll talk about some other ways that we can do that just in terms of more of an online perspective. But yeah, I mean, I think that's important. 10 authentic connections is better than 100 inauthentic connections. You're going to get a lot more juice out of that connection if you do it the right way. And for me, it's just sort of how I approach life generally. I'm very much about, I do business with people I like, I hang out with people I like, my clients are people who I like. So I'm looking for that. Like, even in a networking situation, if I'm not having a personal connection somehow with people, we're never going to do business together. Even if you know the clients or people I want, if that's not an authentic relationship for me, I just can't move forward with that.
Yeah, I'm so there with you. I mean, business, we spend so much time, so much of our waking time developing relationships and being thoughtful in terms of how we want to spend our time, because we're so busy.
Mm-hmm.
And you really do have to be mindful of that, right? Like, and also you need to protect your time, making sure that like you're not overextending yourself, right? As
Yeah.
much as it would be fun to connect with everybody, there's only so much time in a day.
Yeah.
And you really have to be careful that you're not filling up too much of your time with not enough strategy when you do spend time going out and meeting people, or taking everyone ask, oh, I'd love to get your ear and ask you questions about this, right? And
Yeah.
this or that. And it's one of those things where, as much as I'd love to connect with everybody who wants to get to know me, I also am mindful of the fact that I have a family and I have a dog, and
Right.
I want to stay healthy and be fit. So one interesting way of dealing with this is the idea of convergence, right? So taking certain things in your life that you really enjoy and spending more time doing those with others, because then you're connecting on shared interests or shared healthy pursuit. But ultimately, we all need to feel a sense of belonging, and so those things are so important. Some of the closest people I have in my life are my business connections,
Yes.
and they've become like best friends to me because we share that bond of knowing how hard it is to operate a business.
Yeah. For sure. And I think, we are a perfect example of that, of how
Mhm.
long this relationship has taken. And we met at a networking event and it's
Mhm.
built over time. We've found those sort of small pieces, just like any friendship, to build on that relationship. And I want to take that a little bit further because there's a million different ways you can network. I just want to share some of the top places that I have had the most valuable networking, be it online or in person, over in the course of where I'm working. The number one way has been to join a very specific networking community. So Women in Biz Network is one. I was a member of Cowie here in Toronto a few years ago, but anchoring yourself to some kind of like-minded community of business owners, I find, is a really valuable way to network. Firstly, where they are having networking events, you're in that community, you show up regularly, so you start to get to know people all the time. You're not going in cold into a new Zoom room or a new, physical room on a regular basis. So anchor yourself to some kind of network, or it could be a Facebook group, but somewhere where you show up regularly and people get to know you and contribute to that community. The second place that I've found super valuable for very powerful connections was being part of a business mastermind. And again, no one in those groups are looking to sell to each other, but definitely people are looking to network, be referral partners, be joint venture partners, and people are operating at that same level in the mastermind. So I've been part of masterminds. Leigh, we have our Rise and Thrive Hive business mastermind, which is offering people an opportunity to do that as well. It's not all about networking. It is about knowledge and knowledge sharing. It is about collaboration and building those relationships. Being part of those groups, masterminding has been critical for me. And the last one that's been super, super valuable for me has been like conferences and courses. So for example, I was part of the Launch Club community for a full year where we were really immersed in learning how to do online launches, and everyone was in that same boat. They were all in different industries. And I have had tons of collaboration opportunities there, lots of referral opportunities there. People are really looking to find those JV partnerships. So that sort of learning opportunity has also been a place for me that's been very, very valuable. And particularly in this online space, those kind of communities where you're showing up regularly for a common goal, I find them perhaps some of the most powerful ways to network.
Those are some really awesome tips there. So we just had a question. What are your tips for someone starting to explore specifically referral networking and partnerships?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. I would say, first of all, is still not start the networking. I mean, strategically, that's in your mind, but don't start the networking with immediately that being your ask. That would be the first thing I would say. In terms of, there are actually groups and community, which is like Joint Venture Inner Circle and some other communities like that, which are literally intended for referral networking, right? So depending on what your angle is on referral networking and partnerships, there are some groups that are specifically there that you're having a conversation with someone because you're going to think you're going to be a right fit to do some kind of joint venture. But if you don't want to go straight to that, again, I would say find groups and communities that you feel aligned to. that you feel very aligned to, that you want to be a part of, that you can contribute to, that you can help other people in that group. I'm sure maybe you have some specific knowledge about, I don't know, you feel free to write in the chat, but a specific topic area that just in that group, you share knowledge and information in that group. And over time, people are going to get to know you around that. Organically, people will come out for that. Or when you've built up enough of a relationship and added enough value in that group, then it's appropriate to say, hey guys, I do ABC. I'm looking for a couple of people who would be interested in being JV, joint venture partners, or are looking in some kind of, to collaborate on a referral. If anyone's interested, send me a DM or let's get on the phone to chat. Everyone has their own sales style, but it's a far stronger way to get a sale than cold calling out to someone and saying, like, I don't know you. Do you want to be a referral partner with me? I can tell you right now, like, I do not do business that way with people. And we all get it. I get a million requests a day on LinkedIn. It's like, oh, blah, blah. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Do you want me to sell you this? It's like, I don't even know who you are. And no, you've had nothing value to me. You've given no value to me except wanting to sell something. That's not networking. That's selling. All right. So there's a real fine line. So Shriva, I hope that helps you. I would find a community that sort of feels aligned to your value and are kind of doing similar things in the similar space. Complementary services are always good. And or join a mastermind, be part of a mastermind and develop your own learning and show up in there and be a collaborating partner in there and then make the ask in there. That would be what I would suggest. Leigh, any other thoughts you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add to that. A lot of times people are looking to network and to build their business by looking for opportunities to speak. So we get that a lot. We get a lot of people asking to speak or be interviewed on our podcast or things like that. And that's great. We love those pitches, but at the same time, the first thing that I would suggest to someone who reaches out is to say, okay, would love to connect with you, and see about possibilities of having you speak. But first and foremost is come and experience an event, one of our events already, so that you get to know people first. Because first of all, it's going to be more productive. You're going to get more out of it, and everyone else is going to get more out of it and be more receptive to you if they've already built a bit of a relationship with you to begin with. So I think that's really important. So go for the ask right away. Get to know the community by participating first, developing a relationship with the individual that's running the events. And then that becomes less of a cold ask and more of a, an obvious win for everyone. Yeah,
absolutely. So. And Leigh, I think there's another question. I can't see all of the questions, so you might need to read the top one out for me. What is that one?
Just that, not a question, just that it's a good point. Organic conversations. I think it's all about adding value, which is a great, truth.
Yeah, I interviewed someone on my podcast a few weeks ago. His name's Alex Kerr, and Alex used to work for a big online course provider. And how he got that job was he followed these people on YouTube. They had an online group. He showed up in that group. He was quite technical. He showed up in that group and he just added so much value. If anyone had a question, it's like, oh, how does this system work? He's like, oh, here, I'll show you a Loom video. He just gave so much value that eventually he was hired by the company. Now, you might not want a job, but partnership, collaboration, whatever it is. He offered so much value in that the owners of that group actually reached out to him and said, hey, you're adding amazing value in there. We'd love you on board. So don't underestimate their power of that for sure. And and even with podcasts, I have a podcast as well. If you've got a podcast and you're asking to be on someone's podcast, why don't you offer a reciprocal? Say, hey, I'm looking for my podcast, and maybe, I notice you have a podcast as well. Maybe wouldn't it be great to do a reciprocal kind of podcasting session, something like that? I just think you're going to You're going to spend your time more wisely. You're going to get much warmer leads and referrals and traction. You're going to build your credibility, and people aren't going to be scared to talk to you. They're going to know that if they speak to you on the phone, it's not always going to be about the sales pitch. And I think that's number one key in networking the right way for business.
Lovely. Well, I think we should probably wrap things up. And thank you for the great tips and for the great questions in our community. So thanks, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.